In this video, I want to address some of the common concerns that people might have regarding zeolite. And the first thing to understand is that zeolite is a broad term. It's a class of mineral. So not all zeolite and not all zeolite supplements are going to be the same, and not all of them are going to be safe, and some of the concerns are going to be legitimate. Now, the zeolite that we use in ZeoCharge is called Clinoptilolite. So Clinoptilolite is the type of zeolite that has been most studied for humans, to be safe for human consumption. So that's what we're using. But even within the Clinoptilolite zeolite, there's a lot of variations and different sources and impurities and percentage of Clinoptilolite present, ratio of minerals like the silicon to aluminum ratio, et cetera. It's quite complex. So there are a lot of factors to consider, and that's where some of the concerns come in. But with ZeoCharge, the concerns that are common with some of the other products, or just in general, we can prove that they're not an issue with our product. So we'll start with, and for right off the bat, it's natural. It's a natural Clinoptilolite, because some of the products on the market are synthetic or lab grown, some sort of man-made version of a zeolite, and it's not going to be the same. And those I personally do not recommend, because those are going to have some of the issues that we're going to discuss here that aren't present with ZeoCharge. So the first concern people express is ZeoCharge going to cause some sort of aluminum toxicity? Because there is information out there that says don't take zeolite because it has aluminum in it. And that's true, because zeolites by nature are classified as aluminosilicates, meaning they're primarily comprised of silicon and aluminum. It's part of the structure, but that doesn't mean the aluminum is going to break apart and cause any sort of toxicity in your body. So, and that's one of the reasons that the Clinoptilolite version of zeolite is used for humans, is because it's a much more stable structure than a lot of the other forms of zeolite. So it's got a higher silicon to aluminum ratio than other zeolites, which is kind of controls the stability of the structure. And ZeoCharge actually has the highest silicon to aluminum ratio that we found out of any zeolite supplement. So it's even more stable. But just in general, the studies show that Clinoptilolite zeolite doesn't cause any sort of aluminum toxicity, because the zeolite simply passes through your body, collecting toxic elements, and then it's removed. It doesn't break apart like some other forms of zeolite may. So we can prove this. And we did the case studies program before launching, just to make sure that we knew what we were doing before we started selling the product. And the first thing we did was determine, is it going to cause aluminum toxicity? Because that was the number one concern. And although the research indicated it wouldn't, we still wanted to check for ourselves. So the first thing we did was had this ZeoCharge aluminum trial, just one person, basically 10 days in a row of taking an entire jar a day. So much more than anyone would take. So that's 150 grams or 30 scoops of ZeoCharge for 10 consecutive days. We did a before and after test with tissue levels of aluminum, and you can see that zero change. I mean, we're talking to the 5th decimal point. It went down 1 point. So, and that shows you the accuracy of this test. Reproducibility of the test as well. This is the Oligo scan that we were using for the case studies. But you can see no movement after 150 grams a day. Okay. Also, in the case studies program, we saw not only did it not cause aluminum accumulation in the body, but most of the time it resulted in an aluminum detoxing effect. So it actually is the opposite of what most people are concerned about. So you can see a few examples here. And these are higher doses than a lot of people would take with other zeolite products. Because, for example, a lot of the liquid products, you're getting like 2 milligrams or less, sometimes less than a milligram per serving. And we're talking about, this is 30 grams, so 30,000 milligrams. So we're talking about tens of thousands of times the dose as a lot of these other products. Yet there's still no concern for aluminum toxicity, which is fantastic. So here we're looking at almost 35% reduction after 9 weeks in aluminum. And this is the tissue level. 35%, 29%, and there's just a bunch of them. But generally what we see is a reduction and not an increase in tissue aluminum. So that's fantastic. All right, next question. And with some of the other products, once again, there may be concern, especially with the lab-grown or synthetic zeolites, because there is at least one study showing that one of the synthetic versions of zeolite actually did accumulate in tissues. So once again, that's a totally different thing. A synthetic zeolite is going to be completely different than this natural clinoptilolite zeolite we're using in ZeoCharge. So you want to make sure you're using the right product. All right, next question is, will ZeoCharge remove essential nutrients from my body? And that's one of the main concerns with a lot of detox agents, chelators and various things, is a lot of times they'll trap the bad and the good. Now, ZeoCharge doesn't do that. And zeolite in general, with good quality, properly remineralized and clean zeolite, clinoptilolite, won't do that because it works by a swap mechanism, where basically it naturally occurring, it has electrolytes, potassium, sodium, calcium, magnesium generally, and it holds those in its cage-like structure, and then it works with a swap mechanism. So when it comes across a more toxic element, which is heavier, it swaps the minerals it has for the more toxic element. And that's why when it comes across one of the other essential minerals, it leaves it alone because it already has the minerals it prefers with the calcium, magnesium, and etc., the other electrolytes. So when it comes across mercury or something, it'll swap it out. And that's kind of how it works. So it's pretty cool. You could still disrupt mineral and nutrient status taking any zeolite product if the detox is inefficient. So based on, how the person responds, if like with a lot of the liquids or low dose zeolite, a lot of times it just goes in and stirs things up. It's not directly pulling out minerals or vitamins, but it could still negatively impact the mineral and vitamin status by because of the stress of the detox through redistribution of toxic elements, etc. But here's just a few of the things people are most concerned with a lot is the copper and zinc, and because they don't want to lose those. But here's just a few examples where the initial test was gray and then the retest was the color. So you can see in all these there were low levels of copper and zinc, and they were actually coming to balance. So just from taking the zeolite at a pretty high dose, right, 30 grams of ZeoCharge, we were raising the levels of zinc and copper in all of these cases. So that's pretty cool. Now, a lot of times what happens as well is the zinc and copper will be elevated, and then the ZeoCharge also brings that down. So it actually has a regulatory effect on a lot of the minerals. If they're too high, it generally brings them down. If they're too low, it brings them up. So pretty cool stuff there. And then vitamins. This was really fascinating to us in the case studies program because ZeoCharge does not contain vitamins itself, but we were seeing people's vitamin status absolutely skyrocket. And so here's 2 tablespoons or 10 grams. And this is before we had scoops in the jar because this was during the case study. So a tablespoon is a scoop. So 2 scoops of ZeoCharge. After 2 weeks, just skyrocketing all of the vitamins. Absolutely incredible. And it's just because and it just shows that the ZeoCharge not only is detoxing people, but it's reducing the total stress load on the body as it's doing so. And that's resulting in improved vitamin status a lot of times because as the oxidative stress and other stressors are removed, the body doesn't have to use up its natural resources as quickly. Absolutely incredible. Even the vitamin D these were done in the winter in Iowa. And people were without vitamin D supplements and really not getting any sun. Just incredible how their levels are just rising on all this stuff. So one thing we'll say is sometimes the minerals and vitamins will fluctuate, but there's no net loss in them. So for example, a lot of times like you start taking the ZeoCharge, the vitamins skyrocket, and then sometimes they'll kind of fluctuate back and forth as the body goes into deeper levels of detox. But the body is willing to go into the deeper levels of detox as it has more resources available. So for example, in this individual, I don't have the full case study here, but in cases like this, a lot of times the levels rise, and then the body, because of the improved nutrient status and the reduction in stress on the body now has energy to start releasing some of the deeply stored mercury and other toxic metals. And then sometimes that does cause a little bit of stress as they're being excreted. So then the vitamins are used up in that process. So they'll kind of drop back to baseline, and then they'll pop back up again though. So it's kind of interesting. So depending on when you test, sometimes it looks like it could negatively impact things short term, but then if you retest in a couple of weeks, it always is back up. So it's either a net nothing or a net gain in the vitamins and minerals, but it does fluctuate. It's really interesting stuff. All right, so those were the main concerns. We also, a lot of people say, like the powdered zeolites can't offer a full body detox or whatever. I mean, we're really the only company that can prove that our Zeolite does offer a full body detox, because there's a lot more to consider than just whatever claims various companies are making. But we're showing the tissue levels of metals being removed. And you can just go to our case studies page and look at a bunch of case studies, or go to the education, watch the videos, and you'll see that ZeoCharge is definitely offering a full body detox, and it's doing so very gently. So those are some of the common concerns